And just before we start the talk, we'll be having just some opening remarks from the Economic Development Board. John Kilmartin, the Executive Director of ICT.
Thanks, Arij. I'll be very brief. I know you didn't come here to listen to me to speak. You have two fantastic speakers here. First thing, welcome to Startup Bahrain Week. We have a week's worth of events happening. It started with the Game Jam yesterday in the Polytechnic. There was 60 developers, 16 teams, and developed their concepts. Really positive start to the week. We have the talk today. We have CH9 running a workshop today over today and tomorrow for 20 teams to develop their ideas. We're running into Doers and Thinkers on Tuesday, and then into the kind of the main event of the week on Wednesday and Thursday, Unbound, down in the BIC. AWS are also, Pakiza here is the organizer and she's beckoning me to remember everything. AWS are going to have a talk on Monday night down in our capita. So you get the feeling there's a lot going on. You can visit the website startupbahrainweek.com to get some details. It's great to see new faces. So the aim of this week is to bring new people into the ecosystem. The Startup Bahrain ecosystem is about a community initiative. So while Arij said that EDB sponsored and tried to, that's not really true. There's a lot of people involved in this. There's Tamkeen are playing a big role in this. Some of the ministries are playing a big role. BDB through Rowad are playing their part, CH9, C5. So what we want is, we want lots of different people playing their part and playing that role, which is happening. And we want new faces to come in, which I'm seeing here. There's people that I know and people that I don't know. So it's absolutely fantastic to see new people involved, and that's what we want. We're growing this ecosystem. And we can only grow that if more people come in. So welcome tonight. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I'm sure you will. I've heard the guys before, so there's lots of good insight there. But thank you very much for coming along. Encourage you as well to go along to some of the other events as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Just a few words. We wanted to actually thank Eli, who actually doesn't usually do talks. So we're very actually honored to have him. He does very few talks. So for those of you who are here today, or those of you who are tuning in through live streaming, are very lucky to actually hear his views, which are not always the conventional, as I hear from Walid over here. So we're all excited to hear what he has to say tonight. And like John said, we hope to see you during the rest of the week. As for questions, because usually, as I know, Ali and Walid, when they get into different talks, they go on for hours. So just in case we don't have enough time for questions, I would like to encourage you guys to all either tweet your questions to @rowad.co or @startupbahrain, making sure that you tag us @rowad.co on Instagram and as well as on Twitter. And just let us know your opinions, and then we can at least field it through, and I can bully them into answering some of your questions tonight. So without further ado, Walid and Eli, here you go.
Thank you, Arij. Thank you, first of all, thank you, Startup Bahrain Weekend. Thank you, Bahrain Development Bank and EDB for this fantastic opportunities, or talk as well. I think this evening is a special evening in many sense. It's definitely a special evening for me. I've always considered Eli as not only my friend, but more of a brother. And our views on how this ecosystem in our part of the world have evolved, I think, are deeply rooted in a mutual experience. I have so many questions to you, Eli, and I think throughout the evening maybe we can touch on some of the learnings that we have, the challenges, but definitely the story behind Anghami. And it's a complex story that touches on products and markets and business and culture. And at the essence of it, there is a learning that we've gone through, all of us, whether we're sitting, whatever we are on the table, you know, either at the investor side or the entrepreneur side or the team, or so I really look forward to this timeline review, if I might call it. A couple of fun facts. First of all, Anghami went live on November 5, 2012. I remember it because I was there. And from that day, 5 years later, almost, Anghami grew to become, I think I can safely say it, the largest tech company in MENA. 60 million users across the Arab world and even beyond. That puts you probably behind WhatsApp or Facebook or, you know, some of these big names. It is a very complex platform, a very complex product. 1 billion songs streamed every month. Many players and moving parts that go into this platform technology. And in order to get a sense of what is Anghami, and that's actually something that we rarely do because we rarely talk about products, especially in events like this one. Why don't we start by a simple description? I know nothing is simple in this business, but so try to simplify as much as we can of the product and the platform behind Anghami. I mean, what is Anghami? Is it the interface that we see? What is it? Is it the streaming technology, the multiple stacks of tech that you've built? How does it look today? And maybe we can, later on in the evening, fast forward or go back in time and see how this evolved. So how would you describe the platform today as it stands?
Hello, everyone. First, thank you for having me first. I mean, as I said, I don't do much talks, not because I don't talk, but because I prefer to act. But today I came and I discussed just a bit ago, it's like everything I want to talk about today has to be actionable to the audience. I want to talk about something that might be cool for you. I mean, I will listen to a story, but what am I taking back home with this story? I think a lot of things that we've done as Anghami are quite actionable, quite usable, by anybody who's actually trying to build something. So if you're a builder, I mean, you probably would need to take some notes. If not, enjoy the story. I've known Walid since we started Anghami. He's probably one of the reasons Anghami exists as it is today. We wanted funding, so they were our first investors. Big back, Anghami is supposed to be simple for everyone. Beginning at your question, what is Anghami? Anghami is a music service. Basically, when you want to listen to music, we're supposed to open it, and we're supposed to give you whatever music you would enjoy. Be the ideal scenario, right? And we'd want to make it as simple as what I just said. Forget the platform, forget the complexity, the tech stack, and the years that we're building, and we're still building and changing and iterating the product. For a user, it's supposed to be simple. The complexity is supposed to be hidden for us. We've been doing a lot of AI and a lot of machine learning work in Anghami over the past 2 years, but that's not supposed to show for users. And that's the beauty. I tell my engineers, we're supposed to do the hard work, the user doesn't have to do it. It's one of the two that needs to do more. And so that's generally when you're doing anything, you would want to take some decision and say sometimes, okay, it's not a big deal if the user do it, or sometimes it's not a big deal, I need my people to do it. You have to define on that and to see whether it's worth it or not, and you probably iterate and to get to the right thing, right? There are some decisions that you don't know why they haven't been done, like editing a tweet in Twitter, right? Then you'd say, why didn't they do this, right? So Twitter makes it harder for you to edit a tweet, or you'd have to delete it and post another one. But there must be a reason for it. In our case, we started by building a product that we thought was simple, because when you created a product, when generally anybody creates a product, you create a product for yourself. You're very much selfish. You see yourself as the center of the universe. I At the time, because it's important to know, we created it simply because my partner and co-founder Eddie wanted to ski, and he skis a lot. I mean, we were skiing the other day, and
I heard you were skiing yesterday.
Yeah, I was, yeah. Mea culpa. Right, so we're in Lebanon, so we get to ski. So basically, he wanted to ski like, it was like 6-7 years ago, and he was telling me how complicated it is to listen to music while skiing. It was 7 years ago. We had no iTunes in the Middle East, no comparative to Anghami, obviously. We had to actually pirate some music and download it somehow, and then put it on iTunes on the computer, and that transfer it to the phone or to the iPod. So it was a complicated process. And he was telling me it's complicated, there has to be a better way. And it was just happened like that, and then we started thinking, oh right, there must be a better way. So I had created multiple companies before, so I'm a product guy, I'm an engineer, I like to create stuff, that's what I enjoy, that's what I'm good at. And we started, it all started because we wanted something, and wanted it for ourselves, purely. And the first versions of the product was very, very simple, but it only worked for us, for what we wanted. With time, we realized that it doesn't work as we wanted. It works like, you know, every person uses music in a certain way. So for now...
So I want to come back to these early days and some of the decisions we had to make on the product side, especially the whole discussion about mobile versus web, the complexity of the library, the streaming. I remember your first days trying to stream on Edge, and actually you build a proprietary streaming technology, and you have to test it in the mountains in Lebanon, near to the ski station, so it actually can deliver on. So I want to go back to these early days in a bit, but I think I really would like to describe the architecture of this platform that you built, because on one end you have obviously what the user sees, but the stacks behind it go deep into connecting not only the music artists, producers, labels, the content on various platforms from one end, but you have also, as you mentioned, machines that try to spit out playlists and understand your recommendations and moods, and I want to talk about that piece. Obviously, there is the streaming technology that you have to build out of scratch, whether it's giving out, you know, any type of files, videos, music, etc., and how you scale that, right? And then some of the other hidden elements, you know, the advertising platform that you built, the whole, if I may call it, software as a service, or the marketplace model where you let the artist actually understand and eventually take action, the e-commerce layers it is a very complex product to build. And if we had to, and I'm just naming a few elements of it, if you had to describe the elements and what actually happened so that you went from a just give me my music offering into Anghami today, connecting artists, advertisers, partners, whether they're telecom partners, distributors, and eventually users.
Yeah, exactly. So probably a lot of what Walid just said doesn't connect with you because you don't understand all of the complexity. But when we started, we didn't understand that either. Fine. When you start a business, generally you don't know where you're heading and what will be your best advantage. So basically, when we started, we thought that okay, we're going to do a deal with music labels because, as probably all of you know, Anghami is a legal service, so we don't just rip music out of YouTube and put them in Anghami. That doesn't work that way. We do proper deals with all the labels to get proper music into Anghami. So we thought that, okay, we're going to build a platform to stream music. How do we build a platform that stream music? Most of at the time, a lot told us you can, get some white label service and build up on top of it. I refused back. I'm an engineer. I'm still an engineer. So everything that Anghami has right now, everything literally has been built in-house. We've never bought technology or bought a product or bought any code or something. We took sometimes it took us more time to do something, but we did it, we control it, we have the full, we understand the full complexity, which is a great thing. So Anghami is a product that connects multiple entities. So first you, the user, that want to open Anghami and just get the music with the labels. The labels are supposed to be the biggest source of music. That's supposed to be. But in our region, there aren't a lot of big labels anymore, but a lot of artists in the region start to produce themselves. Right? So I'm creating music and I want to just upload it without actually being signed to a label. So while originally we thought that it was just a label who's going to be giving us content. When I say about label for you, it's something like Rotana in the Arabic world, or like Universal Music or Sony and all of that. So we had to do a lot of these to get all those labels. I'm not going to discuss these because it's very complicated, but it's quite essential for us, but it's a complicated process. But then we realized that to actually serve the market, especially the Arabic market, we had to actually go to the artists themselves that are producing the music themselves, not via labels. And it turns out to be a lot. So if memory serves right, we're only in March, but we have close to 50,000 tracks uploaded in 2018 on Anghami that come from independent Arabic. A lot of users listening to his music in Stockholm, and we engaged those users over there, and we got two booked evenings for that particular artist. So yes, this is part of clearly something that you're not familiar with unless you are an artist, but this is part of the complexity of Anghami. Another very complex thing that we work with is payment. Generally speaking, for international streaming services, the users would pay via credit card. That's the general aspect, or sometimes via stores, via the local stores, Apple Store or Android. When we launched, we knew that wouldn't be the case, because in my previous experience, most of the purchases in the region were happening on e-commerce, on cash on delivery, and on value-added services like ours via mobile operator, via credit on the mobile operator. So with time, we built a platform that connected all the mobile operators to Anghami for us to be able to provide proper billing. We are today connected to 26 mobile operators. That's how it is. It's probably one of the hardest part of building Anghami, was connecting to 26 mobile operators. How is that relevant to you? Yes, most people will not pay by credit card. The proper number, again, take it with just a pinch of salt of a couple of percent probably. Around 32% of our users don't pay via mobile operator. 32% don't pay. But so the remaining ones do pay via mobile operator.
I think this is very relevant to anyone who's trying to build a digital product. What does that telco integration mean?
Hell.
Okay.
Simple.
Yeah, how does hell look like?
It's so many varied types of hell between every mobile operator.
So we understand that the telco operator is extremely important for monetization on any type of digital assets, and that's a great asset that the telco has. But can you give us an example of the data that any telco could give you, and how can you work around that data to go just beyond a simple billing cycle?
Yeah, the point is, first is mobile operator is extremely important in building any digital business. The good part is that they now realize most mobile operators are kind of dumb pipes. They need to connect the user to the payment provider. I mean, they act as a payment provider, and they want that particular business. When we started trying to do deals, the mobile operator weren't understanding why would I actually work with Anghami. It didn't make sense for them. Now it's not the case anymore. Everybody wants to do some kind of deal with us or others around digital services. For us, the mobile operator allows us to reach the audience, and we want it to happen in the most easiest way possible. The problem, and my definition of hell was that that particular aspect requires integration with the mobile operator, because we need to detect his mobile number directly, and we need to be able to charge his mobile number. And if the user has, let's say we want to charge him a 2BD subscription, and if he doesn't have that 2BD for a month, let's say, I want to actually bill him, let's say, I don't know, 0.60 BD for a week. If I can't, I will try to bill him something for a day. So all that integration might sound easy, but it's not. But the point is, without that, we wouldn't scale. Scalability for us is, at the beginning, we didn't think that everything, I didn't think about creating smart charging, like I just mentioned right now, weekly, daily, and whatever. But with time, we realized that this is how it actually works, because not everyone has the money available right now, and we have two choices. Either we try to bill in months. If we can't, then we unsubscribe you, and then we'll have to wait till you actually remember to subscribe again, maybe in some other months. Or if I actually try to get peanuts from you, but still hold you accounted on, so you can actually increase the, renew at a longer period. Just makes sense. So basically, getting money from a user is always a complicated option. a complicated way. It's not easy to get user to pay, and that's a whole different discussion. But when you want to get money from a user, the mobile operator will always be the best way.
So it's this complexity of figuring out who you are, where are you, and integrating with the telco. And I'm sure these integration could take up to 9 months of hard work in some instances, if not more. Allowed you to innovate on your pricing model, and then that's something that is allowing the scalability on your paying customer tier. Because remember, Anghami has a free customer tier and a paying customer tier, and therefore, to go back to our point on complexity, then that's kind of one way of unlocking value for the long run.
Yeah, but in terms of complexity, because you mentioned so many things, I just started talking about complexity, but there are way more. When we get to advertising, see, Anghami right now has ads, and I hear every day users complaining about ads on Anghami, which makes sense. See, when we started Anghami, we were totally anti-ads. We didn't want ads. We kept the first 2 years totally being against ads. I didn't want to interrupt my users with ads. I tried to avoid having ads. Why? Because that's actually generally something that happens with everybody. It's a part of the business I didn't understand. If I don't understand something I'm not good at, how am I going to be able to use something in my product and be happy about it if I actually don't understand anything about it? So my background and my partner Eddie's background were totally out of advertising. We don't understand how we're going to make money out of advertising. We knew that there's a way to make money, but we didn't understand it pretty much. But when we started, our original business plan, if you remember, was that the first year of Anghami would have around 300,000 users. It actually turned out that after 3 months we were at 1 million. So we totally...
which is, by the way, extremely fast by any metric out there.
Yes, even by our dream metric. Clearly we never thought that we're going to be at 1 million after 1 month.
And that crash.
Yeah, it's like, it wasn't easy days, because when you have to scale that fast, you have a team, and you actually plan stuff. You just say, all right, I want to plan how I grow my team, how I grow my servers, how I grow the priority of what am I going to do right now, whether I want to work on scaling, making sure that I have servers that can grow to that many users, or I want to actually add important functionality. When we launched, we're still adding bits and pieces of the product, and that's what every product guy has a problem with. What am I going to prioritize? Will I prioritize that feature which I think is going to be the best feature ever, or I'm going to prioritize stability, having the product be scaled properly, not crash as often. clearly, I mean, I didn't think about scalability to a million user in the first 3 months. Not at all. I remember the first time we had an ad on TV. We had negotiated a partnership with NBC, and we started having ads on TV. It was the first night. We were 6 at the company at the time, and we realized that at the time we did quite a hell of a deal in doing the NBC partnership. It made a lot of sense for us. It didn't make a lot of sense at the time for a lot of people, but for us, we wanted to increase the size of the pie, not our share of the pie, right? So we realized that if we had created a company, it's a nice tidbit, we had created a company before Anghami, to create Anghami actually. The company was called Think Big. It still exists, but I mean, we don't do anything with it anymore. The idea was, we want to think big, we want to grow Anghami to get to something that makes sense for us, like 300,000 users at the first year. That was the target. And when we did the deal with NBC, and this is something very important for everyone, partnerships are quite essential. It's quite essential to understand that there are stuff that you're not best at, and it's better to work with a partner who can allow you to do that. So we weren't best at let's say, in getting users to pay us. We work with mobile operators. Weren't best at advertising that I was discussing. We eventually made a deal with Shwari Group to handle our advertising. They were better at ads than us, even though we built the network, the infrastructure of ads.
The exchange, the
actual tech, anything tech, we control it. So we build that. The rest,
I mean, just to give credit to what you built, I mean, the granularity of what you offer for your advertisers in terms of data is very unique. So advertisers can know whether, I'm at the gym or I'm in a car or what type of playlist, and that's perfect. If I'm a car manufacturer, I can target you in your car.
Yeah, we're all over. I mean, Anghami platform is all over. We're started at a mobile and then desktop, but then watches, then cars, then speakers, and so many other things. But the point is, in terms of ads, what's important is actually to track the behavior of the user. We didn't understand the whole concept of ad targeting, but because I'm an engineer, a geek, wherever, I wanted to actually save as much data as I can about any user. With time, I realized that the data that we saved made sense. As an example, we were saving, anytime a user uses Anghami, we're saving anything that the phone would provide us. So whether he's actually right now in Bahrain using a certain iPhone X, for instance, in my case, and then tomorrow I'm going to be in Dubai, the next day I'm going to be in Beirut, right? I'm saving that the user is actually connecting from different places. I'm saving his phone, but I'm actually saving that actually the user is probably doing doing on the gym, doing something in the gym, or actually doing biking or wherever. I'm saving anything that the phone would provide. At the time, again, as I said, I didn't understand why am I saving that, but it's data that eventually would make sense. So that's when a lot of people talk about big data. It's totally irrelevant. That wasn't big data. That was simply saving data. But actually trying to understand the data and making sense of it would be called big data. And that we got to it years later. So in my case, and that particular person that travels, I can actually, right now I have a profile of a person who seemed to be at, let's say, who seemed to have a phone that's expensive, who seemed to travel between different cities. So clearly, if I want to target, let's say, an individual, if an ad company, whatever, publisher, an agency want to target a person that travels a lot, that has a good income, it seems, right? That data might help me, right? So we eventually cluster the data in a way whereby we're providing that particular targeting. I can target a user that actually bikes a lot, or because I have this data, for instance. But what's better for us is that we can also target users that they're happy or they're sad, because we can detect that you're actually have a love problem because you're suddenly going on weepy songs. And yeah,
listening
that's
to
music,
the
yeah.
Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, that's kind of music. I mean, that's something that originally we didn't know that we're going to need, but later we realized that we're going to need to understand users.
So
not
we're
exactly
talking
for
about,
ads.
so let's just break this down a bit, because this is interesting. We're talking about your payment pricing phone data combined with your mood, right? So
Not my users' mood.
Users' mood, yeah. All of our moods. Coupled with, you know, the ability, the willingness of an advertiser maybe, or an artist in this sense, to make sense of that data. So the examples you gave on artists aren't you? So, and then what's next? I mean, like, where do you see this? Let's fast forward this a bit in the future. How deep can this go?
In the future, just now. I mean, we started making use of all the data I'm mentioning in the past 2 years, but in the past year we're starting making much more actionable stuff. I mean, we have 5 people right now working only on machine learning on that data that we have to actually analyze what would the user want. And we're creating a lot of initiatives that are purely, I mean, AI machine learning to try, because the whole thing is I want to know what the user would like and what the user wouldn't like from music. That if I'm talking about the user, but in terms of advertiser, I want to give the advertiser the users who would actually most fit his data, right? I want the artist to actually target new customers, new users who actually didn't listen to his music, but kind of like enjoy his music. So as an example, we're studying shape forms of the music. So basically, I don't know if you've ever seen music. I like shapes. So we're actually trying to compare shapes of music that's just released right now versus shapes of music that you as a user had listened to, and trying to anticipate that this song that you might know nothing about, you would like it.
Shape as in, so help me understand.
Shape as in simplification of a word, because actually it's
a concept.
Yeah, a whole lot of algorithms to get to this. I mean, I'm just simplifying because I don't.
So is this shape related to what? Is it related to my mood? Is it related to my?
It's related to different things, because I'm sure that you're gonna like a certain song in the morning, but not the same song in the night, for instance. Basically, so your mood or the time of day is part of our algorithm, because we believe that the song that you want to listen to right now is going to be affected by so much variables. So for instance, we know that you listen to music at night always, let's say on Wednesday and Friday. That's an example. So if you miss a Wednesday or a Friday, we try to actually re-engage you, because we know that something's wrong right now, right? But we actually expect that on Wednesday nights, you might be listening to hip hop, because that's when you go out with the boys to the club. And on, I don't know, Friday nights, you're taking your wife out, and you're in the car, you're not going to play hip hop, right? So basically, we try to dig this data. And yes, it's right now, most of what we work on Anghami right now is that. And we do a lot of tests, and that's very important. You don't take something and assume it's because you like it, it just makes sense. As a product, as someone who's going to work on a startup, let's say, you don't trust emotions, you only trust data. For us, there's something that we say, it's in God we trust. Everybody trusts God, but in the rest we test. That's a famous guiding principle for us.
That's actually on your wall in your office.
Yes, we test everything. Basically, why would I do something just because Elise said that makes sense? That's one of our engineers would say. I'm going to actually try is this particular algorithm on 5% of the users, another algorithm on another 5% of the user, and then leave the remaining users on the old algorithm. And I'm going to test, and I'm going to see with those 5% on whatever algorithm are actually engaging more, or converting more, or using more, or listening more, or whatever, right? Any particular KPI is going to be tested and going to be validated. So, and then probably Eli's idea would not work, someone else's idea works. Doesn't matter. So basically, always put emotions out of your decisions. Most of the time, I've noticed that whenever it's about emotions, it actually doesn't properly work. A lot of times I see entrepreneurs talking about certain metrics that I call vanity metrics. It's like something that, that because you think about something and then you want that particular something to work and to make sense, and you start putting that hype on that particular metric. Oh wow, it's working, it's making sense, but it doesn't affect anything of your business. As an example, most of the people I know talk about downloads, right? Downloads as a metric. That is important. I really don't think downloads affect your business whatsoever, because it doesn't matter how many users download your app. What matters is how many users use your app or how many users pay for your app. Because
or use it on a daily basis.
Not necessarily. Let's not that be a particular, problem. Not all apps have to be used on a daily basis, right? Like Instagram, probably you're going to use it because you're bored and you want to just see pictures. Yeah, use it on a daily basis.
No, but how about Anghami? What is your daily usage?
Yeah, we have users who use Anghami every single day of the year. We have users who use Anghami 6-7 hours per day, but that's not the standard user. The standard user in the Middle East depends where he is, depends of his age group. So basically, a user who's using, let's say people under 18 years old tend to use Anghami, and there is a segment of those users who use Anghami every day in the morning. We ended up detecting that this is actually bus schools, right? They use it on the bus schools. That's actually, is like, they always use it. They don't skip on that. How many people use Anghami in the morning? I need more. I need really more hands. But hopefully you use Anghami later, and then you'll tell me. But so basically, in the morning, there are people who use. That particular segment use Anghami in the morning. But then there's a different, way bigger segment in terms of age group, differently, that use Anghami at work when they're actually working. They open Anghami and listen to Anghami while working. And that's a different segment.
No, I understand, but I just want to go back and build on your point of AI and how do you actually test and choose the relevant segment, and give us a flavor of what that AI could mean in the future. Because the word artificial intelligence sometimes, and I get to see this with many entrepreneurs, is a bit abused as a terminology. But your method seems to be robust enough to start with testing, and if I'm understanding it well, it also starts with identifying statistically what is it that you're looking after so that you recommend. So that methodology is actually key in getting to the AI that you're describing.
Basically, it's solving a problem. We're gonna have a lot of problems, and a lot of them can be solved with AI. A lot won't be solved by AI. But basically, it's going out of the building, talking to your customers. That's what we actually enjoy doing. A lot of time, we literally go out of the building and go to talk to customers, and many times we actually call customers. It's pretty normal that on a normal week we call like 50 customers, sometimes more. Sometimes we go meet customers, and I think anyone building anything has to do that. If you don't know your customers, you don't know their personas and why they use you, why they might stop using you, and what do they love with you and what they hate. Because I love when people tell me what they love about Anghami, but I actually enjoy it more when they actually tell me what they don't like, because that particular action, there is an action that I can do over here. There is a learning, there is a change that I can actually do when someone tells me I don't like that particular thing. So anything that we want to solve, a problem that we want to solve, let's say, how can I actually get a user that's using Anghami for 15 minutes a day? How I'm going to make him use Anghami more? And here comes in, that's a problem that we have. And then we start by saying, okay, what are the hypotheses? Let me look at people who are on the same persona of that user, who are using Anghami more. what did they do so that actually they ended up using Anghami more? And what if I can learn what they did and then make it apply to others? As an example, we've noticed that people who have their own playlist, who create their own playlist, actually use Anghami several times more than people who don't create their own playlist. That was an interesting observation, but how do you actually get people to create their own playlist? It's actually not easy to create a playlist. It's not easy on any music platform to create a playlist. So we started over the past weeks, we rolled an update on iOS, right now available only, but it's going to be available on Android, whereby if you actually open Anghami and you create a new playlist and call it Best of Beyonce, for instance, as soon as you create a playlist called Best of Beyonce and you save it, the app starts proposing to you songs for Beyonce, telling you to add those songs in the playlist. And as you add more songs, actually propose...
It learns more.
It learns more. So this example of Beyonce is very easy because if you can do it right now, you can see. But if you actually create a different playlist and you call it Love or whatever, and then you start adding songs, certain types of songs, the app will actually suggest to you to add songs that are relevant to that playlist.
Based on the shapes that you've described before.
Exactly. So what we do over here is that simply it's actually machine learning that's happening in real time in front of you. You can test it on iPhone immediately right now. And to do that, we had to actually teach the system a lot and basically those billion or so or close plays that happen on Anghami every day allow us to understand a lot on the usage. So basically, if a certain person listened to that song, what would he be most willing to listen after that song? If he listened to a song X, then comes in song Y, what is the percentage of people that would skip song Y because it's just attached to song X? So basically, this thing isn't as easy as I'm suggesting right now, but I'm trying to simplify.
You have to know what to look for, and in order to know what to look for, you have to test a lot. And so you have to be, data-driven and ready to drop, what seems to be a good idea just because the data tells you so, and vice versa. But I have a question on that front also that's actually resources-driven. How many engineers do you have today? And how many of them are thinking of the future as we're describing it?
Yeah, we're 50% engineers, Anghami. Anghami has been historically around always 50% of engineers. I'm trying to make that number even higher. Today we're 1 or 5 people, 50% of them, plus or minus 1, is an engineer. And what's most important is something that's related to you because you're not going to start a company with 100 people. The first year we were at 6, I think. The second year we were at 12. And then we started growing maybe 25, and then 50, and only the last year we jumped a bit more. But the point is, how do you pick people? I mean, when you start, you don't know what you want. And the first multiple hiring that you do are most likely not going to be a great fit because you really don't know what you want at the beginning. But with time, because it's more important to tell you what I've learned, is that you have to pick people not because they're experts. Actually, stay away from experts. I give you that particular hint. If anyone comes in and tell you I'm an expert on that thing, you're probably not a good hire, right? I skip expert because experts generally think they've learned a lot or everything about this. That's why they call themselves expert. But in our business, there's no expert. We want learners. So the best thing I want in an engineer is for him to be curious, to be passionate about Anghami, and to be a learner. That's great. What's better is actually people who can unlearn. Unlearning is even better than learning because people who can unlearn can learn again and then can relearn or unlearn and relearn. It's because our business in tech is so complicated, so dynamic, so ever-changing that stuff that you start doing, like 5 years ago, doesn't need to be 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, might be totally irrelevant right now. And the way that that to actually grow is you need to actually unlearn old methods and learn new methods. Whether it's actually on testing, whether it's actually on creating, iterating, on hiring people, on building products, on the technologies. It's like we're fully running on AWS. I'm saying it because they're one of your sponsors, so you probably know what is AWS. And originally, when we started, we weren't on AWS, and now we clearly, after within a year of launching, we moved totally to AWS. But within AWS, it's not as easy as something called AWS. There is a lot of complication in it. We need to always create new stuff, change and iterate. As a product, we need to always iterate. If I actually weren't lucky enough to have picked people who can actually learn and unlearn and figure out that stuff that we built last year and took 6 months building, we need to just throw it away and start again, because there's a better way whereby we can save money and be faster for the user and build better for the future. So year by year, I mean, last year we're doing the review, the financial review, and that financial review proved that the tech stack of Anghami in 2017 cost less than 2016, whereby actually had way more users. It didn't make sense. I mean, the CFO wanted to validate with me if anything was wrong. I told him, yeah, it's fine, because we actually made so much changes so that actually it cost us less to serve, not more. But actually we're having way more functionalities.
I mean the streaming cost, the actual streaming.
Not just streaming, I mean entire infrastructure cost. Streaming is one of them.
So I want to go back to this data point, 105, so 52.5 engineers.
No, actually, 52, yeah.
Okay.
Or I'm the 0.5.
Yeah, the point, exactly. So, and I've heard this from Eddie actually, because he told me this once. He's like, oh man, I can't hire anyone at the marketing department now. I was like, why? Because Eddie hasn't found his engineer yet, because you have a rule of 1 by 1. So and for every new non-engineering hire, you have to get an engineering hire. So just a quick question: how many people have you interviewed to get to 50?
Oh. I probably interviewed 30 last month, so basically...
So tell us more about that.
I'm always hiring, by the way.
Yeah, how does that process I mean, not necessarily the process, but what do you think is the impact on the company's culture? And can you talk about culture a bit?
I
think it's important
I think there are only 3 or 4 people in entire Anghami that I didn't interview, and I take it, I mean, till this date, I want to interview everyone that we hire, because it's actually very essential. It's non-scalable. My time is not scalable, unfortunately. But for me, it's very important, because when we created the culture of Anghami, it's a culture of iteration. It's a culture of don't seek perfection, but do your work today, and we'll iterate and make it better tomorrow. That particular culture is kind of weird for many people when they start. It's very weird when you tell people that it's fine, that we're going to create something that might fail, but we're going to fix it the next day. Why? Because most of our school system education teaches you that you need to seek perfection, and you need to be the best, and the best will take time. And if there's a tiny mistake in your exam, it's going to be terrible. You're not going to be the first at the class. So that particular thing leads me to say that there's a lot of problems that come in from our educational system, and to actually be fast and to iterate and to test many theories and validate which works and not, we need to change the behavior of people. For one, we need to work together. So engineers, non-engineers, whatever, have to work together, and for one goal. The goal is for the product to be better, for our users to be satisfied. We have a culture of transparency across the company, so everybody has access to the analytics of everything that happens in the company. So everybody knows how much we're making, or what is working, what is failing, or what are the problems that we're facing, what is our roadmap, what are our problems, what is our pain points, what is stuff that we're succeeding with. That particular culture leads people when they start in Anghami find it overwhelming, because they don't need to know everything, But with time, they realize that it's the sum of those individuals. So many of them are not into engineering. A lot of them are into marketing or in product design or in, whatever, customer support, business development, anything. They want to focus only on that thing, but at the core, every person in Anghami is a user of Anghami. If they're not, then I don't want them to be in Anghami first, right? So as I said earlier, we're not selling, let's say, Pampers, right? Or some people might know what is a Pamper but never used it. In our case, every user, every employee in Anghami has to be a user of Anghami and has to know the problems of Anghami and knows what can be better. So we iterate as a whole. So in terms of culture, if I hire someone who can't fit because, as an example, he thinks he's an expert, he's going to make life hard for everyone else because he thinks what he knows is the best. Whereby when I start as a co-founder, I start by telling people, challenge me. Every day you're supposed to challenge me. If I say something, don't take it granted. Try to prove me wrong. Because I'm fine failing, then within a week, because someone proved me wrong, rather than waiting for a year, right, to find out that what I thought was the best thing would fail. So, and if we can do that within our own ecosystem and figure out the problems internally, why go out and waste money and everything? But just one thing, when it comes to marketing, we actually, with time, changed the marketing structure in Anghami, and it's actually headed by two people. One of them is an engineer. So yes, engineers are everywhere.
Cool. And you also have I think it's 4.8 out of 5 on your iOS rating, app rating, which is...
And Android.
And Android
is 4.7 now.
4.7. So can you tell us a bit more about how you get to 4.8, having 60 million users? I mean, what is it that day to day in Anghami that makes people go after users and literally in some cases, and I hope you can tell us the story, make them change their opinion about Anghami. So
we've done that a lot.
And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So for us, we used to have a department called customer support. You probably all understand what is customer support. Right now, that department is called customer excellence. It's not customer support anymore because we found it's much more relevant. Basically, our lifeline comes in via this department, which is a customer excellence, which try to actually understand how the user is using the app, what problems is he facing, and if there's a problem that he's facing, how can we solve that problem? Per day, we talk approximately with 1,000 people. 1,000 doesn't mean we talk literally, right? It's like we interact with 1,000 people. That's on an average day. Sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, but that's on an average. We believe that any customer that actually gives us a bad rating has a reason, and we need to understand. So the system became quite sophisticated for us to understand who is doing what. So when someone puts in a bad rating, in many cases, we just call him. So clearly it's kind of weird, but we've done it. But I've done it the first time like years ago.
Calling or stalking in some cases.
Yeah, first at the beginning, we weren't that evolved in actually understanding, so we're actually trying to follow up and understand who that user is and hunt him via so many social networks to reach that particular user and stalk and understand what he does, how he behaves, and what drives him to say that particular rating, because we wanted to understand the user before interacting with him. So at the time, I've stalked a lot of users online personally to try to understand, we gave him recommendation about a certain artist, whereby that user isn't into those types of artists, and what drove us to give this recommendation. In many cases, and it happened a couple of days ago, one user was getting recommendations that was totally irrelevant to him. What turns out to be is his sister is using his account without him knowing.
So that started a family fight.
But we actually, we didn't know that he wasn't aware that his sister was.
He actually told you that? He admitted that his sister is stealing.
No, we told them, who's Hannah? right? Because we know that there is a phone. Yeah, there's his phone. There are two phones using that account. So as I said, we capture everything.
The power of data.
Yeah, that data helped us. But clearly our customer excellence department really works a lot in trying to understand what we do wrong. And there's a lot of things we do wrong every day. We're always in a learning experience. It's like when you create a product, you think that product is going to be great for everyone. You think it's going to be the antibiotic that everyone needs. That particular expression is very important. It's hard for you to understand, but I'm going to repeat it. In your life, sometimes you have a headache, and sometimes you have a very big problem that whereby you go to a doctor or wherever, and it tells you have to take an antibiotic. So sometimes you have a case whereby you need an antibiotic, and sometimes you have a headache, you need a Panadol, right? When you create a product, you always want your product to be kind of antibiotic. If you create a product that is a Panadol, which means sometimes you might use it, sometimes not. And if you forget to use it, it's not such a big deal, right?
You can have a glass of water instead.
Yeah, or go sleep or whatever, right? The point is, when you create a product at the beginning, every product that you create, you think it's an antibiotic because you need it. But with time, and unless you actually talk to customers and go out and reach out to them and discuss, you understand the use cases and you understand whether what you think is an antibiotic to you, is just personal. But for many users, it's actually just kind of like headache thing. So that's why you have to really research your product and understand, and then maybe figure out what makes it better. Like for instance, for our artists, we were working with the users and focusing on our users, and are giving whatever is important for the labels, and we're giving whatever is important for the mobile operators and for the advertisers, but we're totally discounting artists. Why? Because we worked mostly with labels. But then artists were telling us, how can we do something together? And it's like, I know that we have a lot of data that would be helpful, but we weren't exposing that to them. And with time, we realized that we shouldn't talk about that, we should build it. So when we created a dashboard for the artist, and when the artist starts seeing it and using it and understanding the value that this data...
Their own performance dashboard.
Exactly.
Song performance, album performance.
But even if I'm a new artist, which thankfully we have in the region right now, lately we've been having more new artists because we need new blood. And I know that I created a song, but I wanted promoted. I wanted to reach users. Who do I target to? Who would actually like this song, right? So how would I actually know who to target it to? Because clearly, I'm not going to put billboards all over. I mean, I'm a new artist. I don't have money. I'm not going to target everybody. I'm not going to put an ad on TV. I want to target users who would like my song. And this is whereby we realized that, that's a very hard problem actually when you have a new song and you want it to reach users who don't know you.
And that's the marketplace model.
Yes, it's a marketplace model
where it seems that the industry, Spotify has been very vocal about it recently, and it seems that, and you've been building this for a while now.
Yes, we've been building it for a while. Honestly, as I said, when you start building a product, you don't know everything you're going to go into. And that particular thing was not one of my first 100 things that I thought I would be building. But when we realized that the data that we have, the taste profile, actually we call it music DNA. Every user on Anghami has a DNA, we call it music DNA. It enables us to understand what does he like, what does he dislike, what type of music, what type of artist he likes, when does he listen to music, what songs he skipped, because for us, and I think it's actually pretty much something you know about without even realizing, that people that hate the same thing you hate, right, you tend to actually be closer than people that don't, right? So practically speaking, a dislike is actually much more important than a like. In many cases, you would actually not tap on a like button to like the song, but when you hate a song, you're going to skip it immediately. So when we actually try to create taste profile and use clusters of people who like a song or dislike songs, we realize that it's much more powerful to actually cluster people who skipped songs, similar songs, than cluster people who actually liked songs. It's really psychology. It's actually looking at real life and actually trying to comprehend stuff that people in real life have been doing for hundreds of years, and actually trying to use it as part of algorithms. But that's actually a real product. And anything that we create, it's actually built on models that have been built before, and most of the time in offline, not really online, and then reused, right? Now, and so many people are reusing it, whether it's Uber or Instagram or others, are reusing old models.
So, and this is, going into human psychology and how you use technology to build better products and stronger products. And that's actually extremely fascinating to see that we're at the cutting edge of that innovation globally. And my natural question, and maybe we're switching gears here, is that how hard it is to build something like this in our part of the world, whereby you're constantly, I think, in need of talent that you do not necessarily have. Some expertise sometimes is helpful, I assume, when you're going and trying to cut deals, whether it's with strategic partners, suppliers, distributors, investors, how hard it is, and by all means feel to be free to talk about everybody, to do this in our part of the world, because you actually basically prove that we can build big scalable platforms within scale, similar to an Instagram or similar to a Facebook. So give us more a flavor of the difficulties that you've had being here in the MENA region.
Okay, that's going to be... so basically, it's very, very, very difficult. Why? The first question is that, money doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't grow on trees anywhere in the world, but in most of the cases, it grows with VCs. So startups, generally, when they want to come up with an idea, they try to scale that idea, start it, and launch it, hopefully without VC support, because at that time you want to really validate that your product is fit to market, and once it all seems to be working fine, the elements of going to market make sense, you want to raise money, and then you want to raise money and grow your product while monetizing it. But monetizing it has to be sometime a secondary aspect. You grow, then you monetize. That's one is, for instance, who's growing a product and then monetizing it, hopefully, eventually. WhatsApp, for instance. WhatsApp grew the product, sold it at 20 billion, and till this instant, haven't monetized it. In our part of the world, you have to grow a product and generate revenue, first and foremost. Startups in our part of the world mostly die, not because they haven't been creative, but because they didn't get to EBITDA positive. That's unfortunately. The problem happens is that simply when, as an example, I'm trying to use whatever I know, is when we launched Anghami, we wanted, we built a business plan that required us to have $2.2 million. And we couldn't really launch the product. And, as I said, ideally you launch a product without VC money, then you get VC money because your product is launched, is really solid, have a basic validation of product market fit so you can scale it later with VC. In our case, we needed VC money. Clearly, I didn't have $2.2 million in my pockets, neither did Eddie. So we first started by doing deals with labels. We locked multiple labels on deals that we paid part of it from our pocket. A lot of it simply signed and said we will eventually get money to pay them back. It was really, I mean, we took a lot of risk by signing deals without having money for it.
And it was a lot of money.
And that was a lot of money. Exactly. But we believed in the product. We believe in our idea. We had a prototype of a product that was available. It wasn't even usable, but it was a prototype. We had, the team was me and Eddie, and we've had a lot of experience in building products. So basically the team was a solid foundation we had. And we went to get money from VCs. I actually cold emailed many VCs. At the time, there weren't VCs. The definition of VC wasn't clear-cut in the Middle East. But the people in the finance world, if you want to say at large, I cold emailed a lot from LinkedIn. I had to purchase whatever in-mail credits, something like that, cold. And, I emailed a lot of people. And eventually, with time, I mean, most of them said, no, what are you doing? And I still have those mails. They're funny. I've met some of the people that told me, no, what are you doing? Go do something else. But anyway, it's fun getting rejected. And I think the idea of getting rejected is really underrated. It's good to be rejected because you learn. You're gonna learn from why you're being rejected and trying to do better, or get stubborn and say, no, I'm right and I don't know anything about it. Because really VCs, it's like they do know products. I mean, they know finance. They know how to get money, right? At the time, they were all starting to build, and they had ideas of what they wanted to build. But tech stuff is product stuff. They don't know it. So we really stuck on, our idea. Eventually, we had a couple of VCs that were talking to us. MEVP were one of them. But the other VC convinced us that our idea of building a mobile app, because Anghami started as a mobile-first app, was a bad idea. We should actually do a web app. So we actually thought that, at the time we didn't know that VCs actually don't know much, right? I mean, quote me on that. But so we actually changed our product and into a web app. So it was all during the discussions. So Anghami wasn't supposed to launch as a mobile app, but as a web app, whereby there would be multiple chat rooms, and every chat room had a certain genre of music that you go listen to. That was supposed to be Anghami. And eventually that VC, I mean, you should never listen to a VC when he tells you change your product. But I mean, that was one of my learnings, never change. Eventually, that VC didn't even commit to money, and even after wasting all that time. Eventually, MEVP, Walid, and Walid Mansour and Walid Hanna were really convinced of our idea and gave us our first $1 million. Remember, we wanted 2.2. Eventually, we launched Anghami with $1 million with more functionalities than when we were supposed to launch with 2.2 million, right?
But exactly, and we didn't have more money back then to give, so that's well, we continued. But I just want to go back to the idea, and I want to be a bit fair in the VC discussion space. And I agree with you that 2011-12, building tech platforms in MENA was not an easy sell for many, right? And the thought process that a lot of people had back then, and including yourself, was really based on comparables. Remember, we still live pretty much in a web-driven world, although mobile was on the rise. Music streaming had many different models out there. Obviously, Spotify was, getting out there. We also had a huge discussion, I remember well, about the size of the library and what do you start with? You start with Arabic only, you start with English, and Eddie was adamant about, was very vocal about that. And to your point, actually, and it's something that I validate, and it's something we say ourselves. If we start telling what to do, the entrepreneur we're supposed to investing in, might as well build the product ourselves.
Great.
Right? So I think to one extent this is true, but to the other extent, and this is why I love this debate, because it's also somehow a bits and pieces of the ecosystem history that we've gone through, is that in order to unlock a lot of money, and 2.2 back then, I mean, Anghami raised way more than 2.2 since then. In order to unlock a lot of money, and that money has to come from institutions and governments and taxpayers and et cetera, there also has to be a understanding where all of this can lead, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we at the investor side haven't figured that out neither, because even still today, when we want to come and say, you know, look at Tencent dropping 150 million on a streaming business in India, and look at, you know, how Spotify is going to list at $20 billion and what have you, we're still today, you know, in need of justifying, at a very, very small rate, although our industry grew, in need of justifying where all of this can end, financially speaking, returns-wise. Because if we're successful, and if there is a positive feedback loop of money flowing back to investors, then that's going to unlock even more potential. So my question to you is that, do you think we're getting out of that cycle in MENA? Do you think this cycle of what comes first, the investor versus the business plan, or how do you see that evolving as we go? I know I have my views on it, but I'm, you know.
First, business plans, right? I mean, I remember when every time we get in a fundraise, we have to give a business plan for 3 years, right? It's like, for me, it's like really, I mean, only probably the Russians used to provide like kind of like 5-year business plans.
Otherwise, the Soviets, you mean?
The Soviets, yeah, right, exactly, the Soviets. Besides that, I mean, how am I?
Industrial planning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how am I gonna give you
idea of a business plan
in 3 years?
No, I agree with you, and we want to talk about that because we actually structured the deal early on in the beginning, whereby if you hit the business plan, you actually we adjust our valuation towards an earn-out structure that we had offered. Our first investment in Anghami had an earn-out structure because we wanted to follow a business plan, and out of 40 investments, we only paid the earn-out once. So that Anghami.
Thank you.
So the business plan, to a certain extent, can also work to the entrepreneur's advantage.
I mean, I'm not talking...
and it's used as a guidance towards where all this goes. No one expects that the business plan on a startup company has to be met. And I think
Yeah, but I mean, only Middle Eastern VCs still ask for a 3-year business plan.
Okay. Point taken.
Yeah, I mean,
at what stage? At what stage?
Yeah, the point is simple. Is the comparative very easy? I mean, we all have a business. We have a music streaming service in the Middle East, it's Anghami. If you compare it to 2 music streaming services available in India, Ghana and Savan, both of them have. I mean, Savan has way less paid subscribers than us. And Ghana has almost no paid subscribers, very little. They have, but very little paid subscribers. But Savan, if I'm not mistaken, has raised so far $400 million. Valuation of $400 million. Correct. But they have raised close to 150.
A bit, yeah, probably a bit more.
A bit more. And then Ghana just raised a couple of weeks ago, how much?
120
million. And both of them combined don't have the number of paid subscribers of Anghami. And in terms of ARPU, the average return per user, the price of a Ghana subscription, price of a Savan subscription, and the price of a Anghami subscription are also incomparable because it's India, the prices are so low. And so anyway, you would say that, India is big potentially, but practically speaking, Savan and Ghana, both of them are older than Anghami, and we're doing a way better value, providing way better value to our investors than both of those guys, but still they managed to raise over $100 million from VCs in either in US or in China in this case. I can clearly tell you we've never raised anything close to $120 million. Why? It's because we're dealing mostly with Middle Eastern VCs, and obviously Chinese VCs and US VCs
are much bigger.
So the problem is, if we are to build a business that is comparable to those guys, whereby I believe our product, Anghami today, I mean, I'm comparing to the two Indian ones because simply that was the discussion. If you use Sovereign and Ghana and Anghami, we're talking about totally different league of products in terms of work.
And I agree with you, and I don't think anyone does that. But your point so VC, why is VC important? VC is important because eventually, for entrepreneurs like yourself or many who do not have millions of dollars, that's probably one of the only pockets of capital out there available. And for us to be serious about venture capital and innovation in the Arab world, a world of 400 or 500 million people and a GDP of $1.5 trillion, most of it driven by oil. If you really want to take a 5% of that and target innovative and GDP output that comes from innovation that is just 5% of that, that's 50 billion yearly, right, on a trillion. So imagine how much VC money has to go into that with all the trials and errors and to your point, I mean, do you feel at least that with the success of bigger platforms and how things that eventually we could evolve towards a more capital to?
I would really love that. Honestly, I'm not seeing the capital available right now, but when I look at the youth, when people over here in Bahrain are really want to, are here attending, talking about startups, listening at least, and a lot of people have ideas. A lot of them have great ideas right now in this room, but are afraid of coming up with this idea, trying to, how will I be able to execute on that idea? Will it work? Will it fail? Those problems, because people cannot really come up and create ideas, are because there aren't a lot of VCs or down the line that believe in ideas and give them
incubators and angel investors and Series A and
angel investors,
supply chain.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I go regularly to Silicon Valley. I meet with a lot of companies. I attend a lot of meetups. I learn, and I know that we're behind with like some 10 years maybe in some sectors. But when I look at my product, my service, my product, my company that we've built comparatively to anything else in the world, we're only held up by the ability of investing more. So anything that I want to invest in Anghami, I have to invest while making sure revenue keeps growing, right? I cannot say that, okay, I want to really reach more users, and I don't care about revenue, because the target is to become the biggest, and to become the biggest, you have to make some, sacrifices, and short-term sacrifices in revenue. The problem is simply I will be reviewed because of the revenue that Anghami is making, and if I want to raise another round, it will be also validated on the revenue, which is fine because companies die because they didn't get enough revenue. But in our case, if we take the case of Anghami, we are at a place whereby we're getting 60 million users on a platform that has never been done in the Arab world, and we want that to be a success. To be a success, we, as people in the Middle East, as VCs in the Middle East, have to make sure that if we actually sell all of our assets, all our companies, new generation companies, to Amazon and others, all of that, the Middle Eastern youth will never have a company to look up for and say, yeah, I want to create the next X or Y, right? I was happy when Souk sold out, but I was sad at the same time, because Souk could have IPO'd maybe. If there was more people willing to put money behind it, that's a whole different story right now, but it could have IPO'd. Ideally, a company like ours can either be acquired or IPO.
So the availability of liquidity, I mean, capital is that, as you mentioned in the IPO example and the Souk exit, is really beyond the immediate investors community. It has to go deep into unlocking more capital from limited partners, sovereign wealth funds, banks, institutions, etc., and all these players who are actually the investors behind the American VCs. And funny enough, many of the investors behind the Silicon Valley VCs are in the Arab world. Big sovereign wealth funds have been, fueling innovation there. Have to come to that equation as well. So it is and I'm talking here as an investor who's been in this, since 7, 8 years now, and we also scaled nicely as you guys did. I agree with you. I mean, it's not enough. We need more. We need way more. And in order to take that to the next level, we need to also show some returns vis-a-vis our investors. And it seems to be it's a chicken and an egg. What did you think about the Souk exit when it came, especially after a prior capital increase that was higher in valuation? What is that?
I mean, this is stuff that you better address. For me, I believe that there is a company that stayed around 10, 11 years, whereby, team members in that company build the product with their sweat. And for me, it's like when I think about my company, my team, the people that really are putting their sweat in creating and innovating with limited resources, because it's very important. When we compare Anghami to Spotify, it's good to compare that Spotify had 3,000 employees, right? And the product is a comparable product, but we have 3,000 employees versus 100. I mean, that's quite incomparable in terms of resources that build to that.
And they've just released their numbers. They make 4 billion euros a year in revenue.
But they lose every day $9 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point is that, I mean, we can't afford to lose every day $10,000.
No, but exactly. I mean, all proportions kept aside.
I mean, make a proportion. Even I can't afford to lose $5,000.
Yeah, and that's probably what also makes us a bit. Would you prefer a Middle Eastern today world where there's money for everybody flowing around?
No, I don't think money should. That's not it. But there should be money for people who have proven that we've. As Anghami, I mean, I'm not being selfish over here. I think a lot are on the same track, but we've proven that we can build a world-class product. We've proven that we can scale that product. We've proven that we are very much comparable towards any other world-class product, but the only difference is that we do not have the runway to actually, spend. I cannot have 100 people to experiment on AI stuff, which actually would add immediate value to Anghami within a year of finalizing the project, right? So the point is, companies are built because of bold visions, whereby we say, I want to do this thing. It might take years to build it, but once I build it, I would have a differentiation. We're working a lot on Arabic music right now. No one has a library on Arabic music as complete as Anghami, because we have licensed every single track of music available. You might tell me there's something on SoundCloud or YouTube that we don't have. Yeah, obviously, because anything on SoundCloud or YouTube is not copyrighted. It's a user that have recorded from somewhere or uploaded it via that. The point is, we've made sure that to actually get from the actual labels or artists, or in many cases, we've worked on legally from getting music that has been validated through ancestors of people, to make sure that everybody have signed the right stuff so we can list it. Whereby other comparable services might just upload without anything copyright, because we think that this is how we have to pay back everybody in the business. It's not about us making money whereby the artists don't. It has to be really a fair marketplace, as you mentioned it before. The point right now in Anghami, for us, we're thinking about what's coming next. And when it's coming next requires a lot of investment, so we can keep doing the good job that we've done. So clearly in the first couple of years, Anghami had a product that worked, but we had a lot of problems in deeper projects that requires a lot of resources, a lot of research. Because we were trying to be clear. I mean, I want something that works today and I will iterate on it. But now, after 5 years, I need Anghami to be a really world-class product. There is nothing...
Exactly, and to your point, I mean, if you look at the financials of Spotify, they spent almost 400 million euros this year alone, last year alone on R&D. And I agree with you. When $1 million was close to impossible 6 or 7 years ago is much easier today to raise from, but getting 100 million is
impossible.
Very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Very hard. So and you seem to be a bit ahead of the curve. And every time you push that boundary, you and other companies.
As an example, we're trying to work on hardware right now. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to disclose what we want to work on. But the point is, Anghami working on hardware, how would that add up if I actually talk about that? And would anyone invest?
That's 250 million from the get-go.
Because it's hardware. Clearly, hardware is more expensive. But the point is, we have to believe that if we want to empower our youth, we want to actually create more R&D. And research and development is the problem that we face. And I've been discussing that project more and more. As an example, it's reference in Lebanon. There has been a project from the central bank whereby they allocated close to
$400 million
to startups. But I actually, my opinion about it, that it's bollocks. I don't want any of that 400 million for startups like that. I would prefer to have $20 million invested in R&D with universities, and then startups would be created out of those research, then would invest only a fraction of those 400 million, but the R&D that would create would create better startups that are fitter. Because I don't want to make a startup that is a copy of another startup available abroad, but I want to have a startup that created via R&D research with university. So, but I mean,
that's actually different. And you have a great point here on the importance of R&D in the Arab world and the need to invest in it, but also entrepreneurship, especially entrepreneurs build businesses at the end of the day, right? So, and investors, whether they are in Silicon Valley or here, invest in businesses at the end of the day. So you can finance a business and not take any money or not be profitable for 10, 20 years, like Amazon did, but eventually at the end of the day, it's a business. And I think, what would be your, so your comment on R&D is spot on, but I think I'd like to, go back to this idea that we do not have enough money to create new startups, businesses. And it doesn't have to be in the tech sector. I mean, there are other sectors that were in the economy that need innovation, agriculture, services, et cetera, et cetera. In order to, get some learnings, what would be some of the advice you'd give today to entrepreneurs raising money, whether they are early on the, kind of the seed, Series A, or later in their cycle? What have you learned?
And Waleed, after write that, I want to take a question from
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and then
sure, we'll open the floor. Yeah, so one is, first, don't take money from a VC till you really need it, right? It just doesn't make sense. I'm seeing a lot of startups starting, with an idea and going to take money from a VC without validating anything. And the problem is that idea might be the best idea ever and the VC would actually give them money, but why sell yourself short? You should be able to come up with an idea, launch it, validate it, and then you'd go to the VC and tell them, I created this, I have that much engagement, I have that many users using my service and coming up on a daily basis versus a monthly active users, even if we're talking about 1,000 users only. But you would have validated that your product And as long as you can live without actually getting money from a VC, it would be better. But eventually, if you want to grow, that would make sense. You would go to VC. But in our case, for instance, when we went to a VC without a product, where we didn't have a choice, clearly, right now, if you can actually incubate your product or get for angel investment or friends and family or anything, so you can launch and then go to a VC with proper engagement numbers, forget conversion.
So that you can get a better valuation and a better deal.
Exactly.
But how about the other stuff? How about the support? How about, how important is that as well from an investor?
So VC support?
Or, yeah, VC support, partner support. I mean, in what shapes or forms can it come?
Yes. Practically, we started by saying that VCs don't properly know tech, that right now they're better than before, clearly, but VCs aren't, if they really knew tech, they would have actually built the product themselves. So Walid said it well. I believe that the community is what made Silicon Valley what it is, and the community is something that's holding the Arab world to where it is right now. People are afraid to discuss with other people their products. People think that if they have an idea, they should keep it with them, elaborate it, and are afraid to actually get it out in the light because they don't want someone to steal it. As LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman says, you have to be ashamed of the product you launched. The first version of the product has to be, if you're restating it, if you're not ashamed of the first version of a product, then you launch too late. I think that's verbatim what he said or similar.
So,
so basically what we lack in the Arab world is a platform whereby people can actually discuss openly. And when you discuss a product, even if it's an idea, the problem is not just the idea that you have, it's probably that idea is, many people have it, but it's you who's going to say that I'm going to leave everything that I have. I'm going to go focus on that idea. I'm going to milk that idea. I'm going to make sure that this idea becomes the best, and I'm going to iterate. I'm going to drop stuff that I thought were good and make others that will become best and better. That process is a process that we're still afraid of doing. That process is that people who are creating startups are becoming more and more vocal maybe lately, but they don't have a support of actually, maybe Rowad is to actually talk, like a room like this.
This is why you have initiatives like Rowad.
Yes, exactly.
And that's gonna.
The point is, of this initiative is not
culture.
Yes, but actually referring to mentors who know better about, like, say, I want to make an idea about a project, and maybe I have a certain IP. When I talk about R&D, this is what I think is the biggest problem we have in the Arab world, because we don't have a lot of our products that we have don't have unique IPs. And that unique IP is actually your value, is what will actually be on your balance sheet as intangible asset, but is important for you to grow your company. This is whereby if we actually invest money, as I say, in universities or others, it will enable us to create products which are competitive worldwide. Because right now, yes, Anghami is a product for the Middle East. It's available worldwide, and we have 20% of our users outside the Middle East. But the next company I'm going to create after Anghami has to be a global company. I'm not going to say it's a company for Arab speakers or whatever, because we can create companies that are for global companies. It's the learnings that we got from Anghami that will enable us, and the learning that we got from Anghami that we need to share, pay it forward as I'm doing today, so that some of you might do something that is way better than Anghami, and global, hopefully.
Inshallah, this day will happen soon. Arish, you had some questions from...
All right. The first question we got was how to balance between building the future and building to monetize. And then we have another question with someone who doesn't like something on Anghami, so that you like to hear. So first, let's answer that one.
Yeah, that's what we do right now. As I said, we're building Anghami, and we want to make sure that we grow the revenue, and at the same time we're building for the future. The balance is not easy. That's not. I divided it by dividing people in the team. So we have people in the team that are working on operational services. So anything that's right now is running, they have a problem, maintenance as a report from a customer or anything operational, people work on those operational stuff. There are people that are working on upcoming features, so basically something that will be rolling within the next 2 to 3 months. Segment of my team is actually in this. They only build products and features that will be coming in the next 3 months. And then I have an R&D team which actually builds products that are only to be tested. A lot of products that we build might not see the light. Some of products will actually evolve to become something very good, and some will actually fail. So for me, because I know that I don't have the budget that enables me to spend 400 million euros like Spotify on R&D, I have way lesser budget, but the point is I believe in human talent. I believe in investing in people and actually trying to get people, you know, as I said, smart, that can learn and unlearn and build with them. So we invest in our people. We've started, most of the employees of Anghami have started with us fresh from university. There are very few exceptions of people who didn't start fresh. I'm one of the exceptions, but most of them have, you know, average age has to be around 22, 23 in Anghami today as teams, because we believe in people who are fresh and we try to actually challenge them with big ideas. Like, you know, can we actually guess what the user would like, what song the user would like, based on the songs he's already listened to? That might be a hard question, but the point is, if we actually empower people and challenge them, you end up really, you can get those answers quite, I mean, they will work out eventually. By dividing the team, I make sure that we have people that are focused on operational, hence revenue always comes in from those people and people that are working on new functionalities. And my R&D team is always working without a name. If they fail, it's fine, because we're going to learn from that failure for the next success.
Next one. You can hear me, right? Okay. The next one is... somebody wants to know, I mean, they love Anghami, but they want to know how come they can't filter by language, and is that something that you're going to bring it in the future? And then we have one more question that says, how do you avoid the user that doesn't know what they want to see until they see it, kind of a problem? And then when researching to iterate the product, what questions or data do you look for?
Okay, so on filter stuff, yeah, we're gonna be bringing that. I hate to add features. I mean, I hate to add filters actually, and I know you're asking for this. The point is, you have anytime we add something on Anghami, we add an analytic event on it. So we want to know how many people actually use it and use it daily. And so basically to know whether it's worth it or not. Most of the time is that we've noticed that those particular filters, like the one, you know, filter on seeing everything only in Arabic or international, we have it on the home page, on the front page, in the search, but we don't have it, let's say, in the likes or the playlists. What we've noticed is that those particular filters that we add are used by a very small segment of people. So when we were putting that on a number, and we see functionality being used by 3% of the people, as a product owner would say, okay, it's not really worth it because the maintenance of that feature over time. But what we also noticed is that our most engaged users are the people who end up using those particular functionalities. So what we've been doing lately is actually trying to do a test. So we roll an update whereby we segment it to only a small percentage of the people with that particular functionality, and then we test it on normal audience and on an engaged audience. And what we've been seeing is that those particular functionalities are not used for the normal audience or very little, but the engaged audience is using that. So the theory is over here, if we actually build more functionalities for the engaged audience, would a non-engaged audience become engaged? Actually, no, they will not. But there are other functionalities that like the example that I gave for playlist, whereby we're using AI actually to enable people to do better playlists. So we get into that area whereby a user is not engaged, we give him functionalities to engage him, then the extra cherry on top of the cake, like those filters, will become usable. So thank you for whoever said that. He will get it within the next months. I mean, it should be out very soon, actually, on iOS, I think. The next function, you asked me.
How do you avoid the user doesn't know what they want until they see it?
Yeah, actually, don't avoid it, honestly. So there are, what we've been doing lately is onboarding. Onboarding is actually relevant to everyone that is building any product. I'm a geek. When I buy anything, I never read the user manual, right? I mean, I've never probably till this date read anything. Because I want to find out. I believe it's something has to be done without a user manual. I should be able to understand it. And if I actually need to be explained, then it's probably a failure. So we've built a lot of things in that way. But then we realized that it actually, not all people are geeks, thankfully. And so we started doing onboarding. What is onboarding? So when you launch the product for the first time, it asks you something. Our initial tests indicated that only 30% of the people would go through an onboarding. In our case, we launched it by saying, what do you like? You like international music or Arabic music? And then depending on what you select, we'll ask you what genre of music you like. And depending on what you select, we'd show you artists. And if you pick those particular artists, then great. You've gone through all those phases, but then now we know a lot to ask you, to help you later. And then we would avoid showing you something that originally you didn't pick, because we know, if you like that particular, those artists that do hip hop, most likely giving you romantic pop would not work for you, so we'll avoid that. But with time, as I said, we noticed that particular onboarding, only 30% of people would go on, but the people who would go on would become one of the most engaged people. But then we changed. I mean, sometimes minor changes, as in ask about Arabic international music, then ask about what artists, without asking the user what type of genre of music, would actually do better. So we did this, and it actually increased it from 30% to around 60% of people entering. Why? Because there's a certain threshold of questions that a user that just installed Anghami would be willing to do, right? And most likely a threshold for any user installing any particular app. He would do 1 or 2 questions. Beyond that, he'll tell you, oh, come on, I don't have time for you. But then again, we've noticed that, we can get more data from a user without him giving us this data, and that would require more work. So for instance, when a user logs in via Facebook, what we do right now is we score his Facebook to see if he has any music artist mentioned on Facebook. We log onto his phone, if he's on an Android or an iPhone, to see if he had any downloaded music available on his phone. And by doing that, I've already know stuff about the user without him even telling me anything. So we've noticed that a good percentage of users would actually would know more about them without asking them anything. And those users are the users that will surprise them. So just imagine you logged in via Facebook, and then you see that Anghami is mentioning or showing you artists that you know and you love, but you didn't tell Anghami. And that's the aha moment that will make you love, actually, Anghami. Simply because we're scoring your phone and your Facebook without even, asking you any question and getting your results. But that experiment is ongoing. So over the next months, we're going to be releasing something like Tinder, whereby we're going to give you artists and you can swipe right or left at the onboarding.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the point is, we do a lot of experiments, and that's experimentation.
And can the artist like you back?
That would be a good one. That would be a good one. We have a lot of artists that use Anghami under their right names and some pseudonyms, but they use Anghami. I mean, and you know, funny is I look at the profile of those artists because I'm privy. I know them. So basically, some of them are artists that listen to their own music. Which, you know, I can't help. And some of them listen to...
Every day.
And some of them listen to all kind of like weird type indies, and they learn probably from different artists, international or from other countries, and I really enjoy those type of artists. Like example, Abu, the one of Let the Art, probably you've all listened to that song too many times. But the point, that particular artist has an Anghami profile, and he listens to all kind of like different type of artists, and I'm pretty enamored by him because he actually learns and, you know, experiments, and I can't look to what he makes next because of his music listening habits.
Okay,
let's take one more question.
Okay. One person was asking, Spotify has a very friendly payment option. And then what about Anghami? What's the difference in terms of friendly payment options for students?
No, it's a student plan, you mean? It's available. It's available also on Anghami. If you are logged in with an email, which is an EDU email, the offer will show to you. So basically, we have a student plan, and it's actually pretty used in several countries. I don't have the numbers over here in Bahrain in my mind, but it's if you're a student who actually logged in with an email any educational email, it actually works for you. You get the problem is that unlike Spotify in that case, because they operate in 60 foreign countries, they have a certain student societies whereby students can apply via those societies. Those student societies aren't currently available in the Middle East. I hope that some student society comes up.
Community will
community.
So we'll take just the last question from the lady behind, because she's been.
Okay, sorry, I need to take the mic just so that we can get live stream.
And then we'll
and then one for John
wrap up.
Also.
And John.
Thanks very much. So in light of all this talk about big data, just a quick question. How much research did you do on what customers wanted before you launched Anghami? Because it was just an idea, right, with a friend. So how much research should go into that? Zero. Nice.
Zero. And I can testify to that, to those early days, because it shows that the quickiness of changing. So to go back to the business plan,
let me just answer her. We made zero research, and as I told you, we made the product for ourselves. We thought it actually matches, and when we launched it, we thought everybody's going to use it the way we want it to be used, and it turned out to be like, you know, like maybe my mom and Eddie's mom and some others were using it like we want them, because we were teaching them to use it that way.
But that's my point exactly. So the original ideas went on, you know, web versus mobile first. That happened very quickly. Library size of libraries, features.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
So, in retrospect, would you have done the research? Because you mentioned something. You said launch and then iterate, but you could lose credibility, you know, of the brand.
No. As I also said, if you're not ashamed of the first version, you probably launched too late. So basically, we could have launched a way better product with a year later. But the problem at that time, I mean, so many other companies would have launched also and created a product similar to Anghami and would have had zero chance to succeed. The point is that, you know, iterate in public is not, as you said, you might lose credibility or you might fail or whatever. The problem is that we launched our first version. It wasn't ideal, but it actually enabled us to talk to the labels, talk to big partners like NBC, for instance, all the mobile operators, start connecting with them while iterating to get to a product that we're satisfied with. Am I 100% satisfied with the Anghami you know today? No. Of course, this is not what I want. I want way more stuff into it. But then again, there are ideas about on Anghami that were in our original pitch that are still not implemented today. Because you'd realize that once you start building, you have building blocks, and then that are essential, and then you have a lot of detours that are very important, like adding an advertising system that generates a lot of revenue for us, or adding a platform for the artist, or doing a total integration with that many mobile operators. All of that, those are detours, but they're essential. But at the core, we're launching a functionality that would allow you to see the story behind every song, or not every, but a lot of songs, which I believe is quite essential for people to love music. And if I actually give you a song that you don't know, but I actually give you the story of the song, probability of you loving the song is way higher if I give you the story than without the story. Because with the story, there's human, there's emotions. And if anything you want to build, like take it a rule of thumb, anything you want to build, if you sell whatever you're building with emotions, versus with features, you're going to win 100% of the time you sell it with emotions versus with features. That's it. If you want a kid to love, maybe a guitar, you can talk to him about the guitar and show him a guitar 100 times. Probably he's not going to fall in love with it. But if you actually show him someone playing a good guitar, a nice guitar song, and playing and making that, the room happy with the guitar, then the kid will going to love the guitar. The point, always talk with emotions, so that builds up.
That's a great point. So we'll take a last question from
John.
John.
If you don't mind, I'll just make a statement first, and then I'll ask the question. On your point about research, I do agree is not enough research in the region as a whole. However, I don't agree that startups come out of research. I think research is all about talent building. So the people come out and they build. So we'll agree to disagree on that at some other stage. My question is, because I'm involved in government and we're trying to develop a startup hub here. Bar money, because I don't think it's the role of government to put money into startups. Bar money, what should government do for startup?
Just one thing on R&D. The problem is most companies that I'm seeing, startups that I'm coming from the region, are have a lot of exceptional stuff that they're doing, but they lack differentiation. You say that your product at the core, if you remove all the UI and everything, something remains out of it. Your IP, that thing is very important for me. Is that what we've built eventually with Anghami? Let's say if I mention machine learning, it's very, very simple. If you read the Spotify F1, their version of the stock, the public document that came up, their listing document that came up like 4 or 5 days ago, you'd see that they tell you one of the problems that they foresee is if their machine learning experiments and project that they haven't yet finalized will fail to predict the right song that the user would want to listen to, then that will be problematic to their business. So the entire thing that they built, exactly, the valuation and the risk of their business, and they wrote it in bold, is that it's built on an idea of a project. The point is IPs. If you look at any business in the region, if the IP is differentiative to them, let's say Magic Leap, it's a startup that is trying to create some kind of AR built in glasses. And I think the valuation of Magic Leap is something like 6 billion or something, but nobody has seen anything.
Yeah, but you're talking about R&D in companies, which I agree with. But if you're talking about spending R&D in universities and expecting that those universities do spin-outs, that's what I don't agree with.
I think Eli is alluding to the Stanford model, which is also being,
No, I'm not. There's hundreds of examples where it doesn't work.
It has. The point is very simple. If you want something to succeed, you have to to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. For me, there are 100 people that are giving away money somehow for startup, which is great, and me saying whatever I'm saying will not stop them, but there has to be someone vocal saying, please guys, if you can divert a bit of that money in research so we can have solid companies, because if we look at Israel, which is really very close for me, many of the startups, and that's one of the reasons that, you know, all of the big companies in the Silicon Valley have purchased companies in Israel, and all of them, 100% of those companies that were purchased were spun off from universities. It's because only in universities will you actually be able to have someone's mind that is totally unaffected by revenue or by...
Where you're starting from.
Sorry?
You have to look at where you're starting from. You go to Israel and you look at the universities, or you go to the US and you look at the universities. The spend is phenomenal. So you look at the spend per capita here, we're not spending enough on education, never mind R&D. So you have to bring up the education spend.
Exactly.
Then build R&D on
Well, I guess both of you are saying the same thing eventually.
We're saying the same in different words. So basically, I interview engineers all the time. I've interviewed engineers in 2011, and I've interviewed engineers in 2017. And both of them, those engineers come from universities and have, you know, something in communication and computer engineering, right? And I've seen that all throughout the time, the delta of different in education in those 6 years is minimal. The point is, if we have more put in those universities, so we can have people that come to companies that are a bit more ready into actually creating tech products. The problem is we're building with people, as I said, that have curiosity, that love our product, and that are willing to learn. But generally speaking, we take 6 months to 12 months to get any new employee into a productive place. Why? Because they know nothing.
No,
The problem is, this is very important for me, and I keep repeating it simply because I haven't seen any difference so far in universities all through. I mean, I've been recruiting engineers since 1993, right? And so far, I mean, I need to recruit engineers and see that, oh my God, those engineers are way better, comparable. How come most engineers in US are you know, there is lack of engineering talent in US and they're recruiting from all over the place? They could be recruiting from our part of the world too. The problem is, have you seen a lot of engineers being recruited?
It is extremely important for a financial investor to have the confidence and the absolute belief that the differentiation is not just a revenue differentiation or an economics or an active use if there's no belief that what you're building can beat a YouTube or a Spotify because we spent 2 hours explaining what it means and we haven't even scratched the surface, then that's also very important. And that positive feedback that will help us grow together and eventually someday and hopefully soon have governments across the region and sovereign wealth funds and banks and family look at that industry differently and invest in R&D in any application may it seem.
All right, let me answer your actual question by first time telling you something. Most of the people who left Anghami to join Amazon, Google, Apple, AOL, and Snapchat. Why? It's because we developed the resources so they can actually go to such companies. If you look in the inverse, people who've created the biggest companies in the US right now, the tech companies, have started from other tech companies. So when you look at, they call it the PayPal mafia, Elon Musk, and I'm not going to count them all, but, basically people who started within a startup ended in creating so many different startups, and it actually goes that way. The point is, if you want to create more startups and successful startups, you need more people to create startups and invest in those startups, not for the direct revenue that you're going to get, but the foreseeable revenue that you're going to get from all those people.
Based on IP,
Yeah. So basically, in Anghami right now, when I say I have 100 people, if actually I can make them 200, 300, what is the probability of those 300 people in Anghami creating actually 10 other companies that will succeed in creating unicorns and more and more? The problem is, if you want to actually make sure that startups succeed, you have to invest in startups and bigger startups so that people, if they want to start their careers, and I tell my employees every day, I want you guys, instead of creating your own startup, work in Anghami, learn how to do marketing automation, because marketing is not creating ads on Facebook, and because I've seen people think that. This is not how you create a company and you market it. It's not how you do business development, how you create a good product, how you learn how to iterate, all of that. Everything that I mentioned, and I barely scratched the surface, is only if you work in a company like ours and like others that you will be able to actually create good, successful startups down the road. The point is that thing whereby, Silicon Valley, the original investors thought that, all right, I'm going to invest in those because I'm going to see the power, the incremental power coming up later on generations. It's because they trusted those earlier generations and kept investing in them. People like Sun, for instance, generated a lot of startup. Why? Because they had that, they were exposed. And I believe people in Anghami will go on and doing more startups.
So can we create the Anghami mafia?
I'd love to, but our type of mafia. But the point is, the point is, eventually, if we can.
No, that's a very good point, and this is exactly how ecosystem mature and gets built. And as you know, Rome was not, and this is why we really thank you for this candid discussion, and that's why actually you don't lose your time going talking all the time about it. You're actually building it, and as we say, Rome was not built in one day. So I think what's inspiring here, and this is probably a message that I'd like to end the discussion with, is that the incremental change that you're doing in people's minds and the culture around you will end up having so much bigger effect to the people around us, the communities around us, to the generation around, and this is how I think we'll build the fundamentals of a new economy in our part of the world, and a new beginning. And that's based on passion, and obviously a lot of brains, and a lot of brain power, and curiosity and merit. And what I like about what we're doing, and our very small participation in that part of the world, is that we're bringing these elements together, and it feels exciting and it feels promising, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you.
And I wish you actually to go and build even more companies, and I really, really look forward to seeing the rest of the Anghami mafia hopefully taking investors' money and building bigger things.
I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody tonight. Thank you.
I just wanted to once again thank Eli for actually making time from his busy schedule, from actually acting in Anghami, then to come and share his story with us here. And of course for Walid Mansour to actually do the special edition of actually moderating our Rowad talk. So thank you to both of them once again. I know a lot of you had some questions and we weren't able to entertain them live right here, but please, we have the rest of the evening for networking and an opportunity, and please try to catch the stars of tonight. So enjoy the refreshments, and thank you for coming on the second day of Startup Bahrain Week. And don't forget that you have your schedules in your bag, and please attend the rest of the week. We have a lot more coming up. And take a copy of the startup notebook on your way out. That might be also useful for the rest of the week. Thank you so much.